start. And like I said, he gave me the information, gave me all 30 whatever questions it was, or 40 questions it was, and I went over it. And so what I went through is I went through the first, like what I saw were the first 4 wrong answers. And if you want to slide it up. And so what I did was on question 18, which is on page 10 of the test, this is the TEAC. Explain the causes, important events, and effects of the War of 1812. This is the question. 51% of everybody chose C. Only 29% chose the correct answer. I am not an expert by any means on U.S. history. I've never taught U.S. history. So why do you think, if y'all can tell me, why do you think that they chose Great Britain, stop the practice of, why they chose stop trading with Britain and France instead of stop the practice of impressment?
Yeah, I think C is also a good answer choice, and that's why kids get tripped up because George Washington, not too long before, talks about, he leaves a precedent of turn into isolationism, don't involve yourself with foreign countries, stay out of foreign affairs, and the United States is basically trying to do that into the point where Britain starts to impress their sailors and forces them into the war. The United States was trying to stick to themselves, basically, and they were kind of forced into that war. So I think C almost is an acceptable answer, but it's not the best answer choice a little bit. Mr. Glass, you probably have.
And I would point out on the TEAC, it says causes, important events, and effects.
Right.
Letter C is a cause, letter D is an effect.
That's kind of what, that's kind of what I saw, that this was the cause of the war instead of, and so what in going back over this question, I'm sure you've already probably done this. What did y'all do to go back over that?
Well, the biggest thing I tried to explain to him is I validated what he said. It's valid to say the U.S. stopped trading with Britain and France because of the War of 1812.
Right.
Because prior to James Madison coming in, who was the president in the War of 1812, Thomas Jefferson did an embargo act and stopped trading with Britain and France. But these are causes. This is before. Right. What has to be after. We have to find what is after the war. And that's what I tried to emphasize. This is the landmine that is the history STAR test. One word. One word.
And I've heard that this test is like the hardest of junior high.
Yeah.
I've taught English in junior high, and people are like, I had several friends of mine used to teach history, and they're like, no, you've never taken the U.S. history test before. So I was like, yeah. I was looking up. I was like, what does impressment even mean? As someone who's not familiar with the language, right?
Someone who's pursuing a master's degree.
Right. Exactly. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so, now granted, if I've been inundated with it all year long and I've been working with it, I probably would have been like, oh yeah. But, and that's where kids, as we know, they get messed up on one word. And if they don't know what that word is. Now, let me ask you guys this question. Can on the STAR test, they look up vocabulary words for social studies or no?
No dictionary.
No dictionary. Okay, so it's only English that's able to do that. I couldn't remember what the rules were. Okay, if you want to go. Okay, so then the next question that y'all showed or I saw, evaluate the contributions. This is the TEAC of the founding fathers as models of civic virtue. Why is Thomas Jefferson's writing of the Declaration of Independence considered to be one of his greatest contributions to American history? This was close, right? And so he showed responsibility by outlining the structure for a new government, and then he helped define rights that would defeat tyranny. And so, what I gathered from this is like, are they not understanding what responsibility actually means? And then do they actually remember what the actual Declaration of Independence actually states, right?
Yeah, kids often mix up the Constitution and the Declaration.
Right, because if you look
directly in the Declaration of Independence, it talks about tyranny and it talks about rights, right? And I think when you're going back over this question, you can highlight those sections of the Declaration of Independence. What are some tricks as to making the difference between the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution that you teach them?
Well, I have 3 bulletin boards. One of them's the Articles of Confederation, one of them's the Declaration of Independence, and I've got Constitution over here.
Mm-hmm.
And this one and this one both make forms of government.
Mm-hmm.
And this one not only makes a government, it limits the power of the government and it protects people from the government.
Right.
They have to understand this is government. This is a breakup letter. This is saying,
Right.
England, it's not me, it's you, and we're done.
Right. Right.
And, you know, I mean, they just have to see it, be exposed to it, and then when it's explained to them after they've been exposed to it in a testing environment, then it makes sense to them.
Yeah.
If there was a
Gotcha.
test, if they took a STAR test, were taught the STAR test they just took, and then took the STAR test again, we would come through with flying colors.
Right.
But it's
Right.
that first time exposure and thinking about things in a way that they don't even think about at all necessarily.
A lot of it too is that we work is trying to just keep things in chronological order. Like memorizing specific dates is impossible. Like that's what everyone thinks history is. It's memorizing dates.
Right.
But it's not so much memorizing dates, but can you remember, does Declaration come before or does it come after Constitution? Like I don't need you to necessarily know the date exactly. If you can just tell me, well, Declaration came first. We had to declare our independence before we could actually establish ourselves a government later on. Like if we can just keep those straight and start
Right.
some of our major topics.
And here's the thing too, like again, me being the ELAR teacher, understanding like what does declaring mean? What does that word mean? Declaring independence, right? That's what the Declaration of Independence is. And if they're, this is not outlining the structure for a new government. This is, this telling you, these are my rights. I'm defining what my right is to leave you. This is why I'm leaving you, because I want you to, you're tyrannical, or I can't say that word. Yeah. And so
But
that's.
I think that word right there is a vocabulary word that not everyone can remember. I think in order to get that right, they need to know what tyranny is.
Right.
And remember.
Right. And so, and those are kinds of, again, me being the ELAR teacher, going back to vocabulary and focusing on the vocabulary that actually trips them up to actually be able to define this better would possibly help them.
Here's the thing, I can tell my kids, if I tell you, we hold this truth to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights among these life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Well, there's the rights he defined.
Mm-hmm.
If I give them that quote, that's how that's the Declaration of Independence. They'll know
Right.
like that.
Right. But
when you
seeing it like this.
But this question where you're using
Right.
words that talk about the abstract of
Right. Right.
that's where they.
Right, and that's kind of, yeah, it's making that abstract become, being able to flip it and make it, real for them, I guess you'd say. So, and then, okay, question 31, which on page 15, analyze the impact of the First Amendment guarantees of religious freedom on the American way of life. Which historical action was protected by the First Amendment guarantee regarding religion? And so here are the choices. Only 23% chose the correct answer. Evangelists-led revivals in New England. The other city officials worked to reduce the political power of Catholic immigrants. And again, going back to understanding like what does the First Amendment actually say? And so I pulled, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Well, this is, obviously, D is an exercise of actual religion, right? You can go have a revival in our United States, right? Whereas this C, so what do you think? What do you think as to why they chose C instead of D?
I think it's easy. They just see Catholic and then they associate, religion, First Amendment freedom of religion, Catholic, that's gotta be it. But they're not really reading and realizing that that C doesn't actually have anything to do with religion, it's talking about political power.
Right,
And so.
yeah.
And so A and B, they're not up there, but
Yeah,
A was actually not anything that had to do anything with religion at all. B, like C, was a persecution.
gotcha,
And so, and
Right.
D is neither promoting nor prohibiting,
right,
which is
right.
avoiding establishment of religion or prohibiting.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go over the question with it, P is for persecuting. So put a P by B, put a P by C,
Mm-hmm,
and there is no P by D. And now you have to pick between
right,
D and A has nothing to do with religion to begin with,
right,
and they don't know what evangelists are. I mean, I had somebody say, what's an evangelist, Mr. Glass?
right,
Okay, well,
right,
in the Protestant faith, you got people who are very vocal about, let's
right,
talk Jesus, and so,
right, right,
that's an evangelist,
right,
anyhow.
yeah.
But
Okay,
revivals, anyhow.
yeah. I mean, again, it's all about them not understanding the full vocabulary of, and again, how do you go about teaching so much vocabulary in such a short amount of time
And
is
everyone
the extremely frustrating part on y'all's end, because it's so much, because they haven't heard these words before necessarily. I mean, because they took Texas history last year and they're taking, so it's a totally different history. I mean, they've heard of the Constitution, they've heard of the Declaration of Independence, possibly in elementary school and in 4th and 5th grade and things like that, but they haven't actually worked with it like you're having to work with it this year. So I know that that's really frustrating for y'all. So anyway, what is it that y'all think would actually make it easier for y'all to teach? I mean, because this is so much. I mean, I was looking up all of your TEKs last night and I was like blown away as to how much you're actually having to go over in a 9-month period of time. So what would make it easier for y'all to get this information taught to them? Do you need help from your ELAR team? Do you need, to go over words like this, or what are you thinking?
Well, as far as cross-career things, we did a tea party, and we did it 2 weeks, or this past week, and everybody says, well, that's way after the Boston Tea Party. Well, the Boston Tea Party is that one event, but we get to Henry David Thoreau, who's a transcendentalist writer,
Mm-hmm.
and he's more famous for Walden and
Right.
his poetry, but he did civil disobedience. And his opposition to the Mexican-American War convicted him to where he would not pay his taxes, and he went to jail for it. And so we talk about actual civil disobedience. The Boston Tea Party is nice, we threw the tea in the harbor, but we disguised ourselves as Indians, nobody went to jail. It wasn't full-blown civil disobedience, it was, we're mad at England. And again, it's this intensive vocabulary. So why are we having the Tea Party now? Well, because Henry David Thoreau went to jail for his beliefs. And then we show them clips from Gandhi,
Mm-hmm.
and that's in India, which is where tea came from to begin with, so there's a little tie-in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we show them Martin Luther King being interviewed after the march from Selma to Montgomery,
Right.
and saying, again, here's another march of civil disobedience. They were told, don't have this march, they went ahead and did the march, and were
Right.
prepared to take the consequences for it, and there was violence that happened and everything else, but not anyhow.
And so going back to cross-curricular,
So anyhow, I felt like we tied in some English there.
Yeah.
I mean,
right. And so it's just a matter of working, and again, what is it during your, if you're teaching, about that question in that section or in that unit that you've taught, are you giving them vocabulary to focus on? Are you giving them anything along those lines? I'm sure you are, but.
It's amazing what the kids can do when they understand the question. I think that's what we're all talking about here is, if the kids knew what these words meant, I think they could choose the right answer choice. So a lot of times, what I'll do is when we're going through activities, I'll take the question and I'll read it to them the way it's written, and then I'll simplify and put it in terms that they can understand.
Mhm.
And then it's amazing how they all of a sudden know the answer choice by
Right.
just simplifying the vocabulary.
Right,
Or taking the passages and taking out, here's all the fluff. Highlight this
Yeah.
word, highlight this date, and give yourself some sort of context for it, and now try and look over your.
Yeah, and so I think those are one of the biggest tools that I use and stuff like he's saying, and it's just repetition of that. And then they start getting more comfortable and more familiar with these bigger words because they've seen us take those words and they've seen us simplify them too.
right. And I think that that's, I mean, in any atmosphere, I've taught anything, anywhere from age 3 to age 14, or actually 16. So I taught all the gamuts, right? And if you can simplify, if a kid doesn't understand and they're like looking you dead eye in the face and going, I don't know what you just said, like at all. Okay, let me bring it down for you. This is what I'm actually saying. Oh, okay, and then, yeah. So it's taking being intentional about making sure that you're going over that to introduce it. And introduce it, it can't be just introduced one time, right? It's gotta be all the time throughout that whole entire unit that you're teaching, right? Because if a kid may have, oh, I've heard that word before, but I don't know what it means, you know? And so, you know, making that cross to where it actually does is a great thing. Okay, so here's the next one. Page 19, question 41, analyze causes of the American Revolution, including the Proclamation of 1763, that's a teak. How do the American colonies react to enforcement of the intolerable acts? And again, really close in answer choices, 41% for the answer here and 40% here. I highlighted the words imported, right? Because they don't understand what that word means, I guess. Did they not? I mean, because import and exports,
Yeah.
you
It
know.
goes from the day one, because we start with mercantilism, which is my first poster up there, and colonies exist to benefit the mother country.
Right.
So you sell us your raw materials, which are cheap, and we sell you, we take those raw materials from into finished products and sell them to you that are much more expensive. It benefits England. And so when we go to the question, the first thing I tell the kids is, do the colonies get to decide what they're gonna tax on England? Are the colonies in a position to tell mama, because it's the mother country?
Right, right.
Do the kids get to tell the mother what they're gonna put a tax on? Does that relationship exist? And as soon as I say that, they're like, oh my gosh, no.
Right,
You have to
yeah,
read, the
right,
colonies are placing a tax on England.
right,
They just see, because they see taxes on goods, well, England does tax them, but
right,
it's England taxing the colonies, not the colonies taxing.
right.
It has to deal with kids not understanding what the intolerable act, they know intolerable acts are associated with the American Revolution, and they're mixing that up with the Stamp Act, the Townshend Act, the Tea Act, like those were
Right.
taxes. The intolerable act wasn't a tax, and so it's just the STAR test intentionally
Yeah,
tricking the kids. Like if
Right.
they ask, you know, they're giving an answer choice that sounds right, that sounds really good, like.
right,
It's like if you give a unit test and our kids, or even just a daily assignment, if you ask this question and you take out other answer choices that, like, they're incorrect answers and they're not associated with that same topic, the
Mhm.
kids do so well, but then when you throw in a real similar answer choice that's around the same exact time frame that was another topic, that's when they stumble and they get tripped up, and that's.
I was having that same problem
What this
this
is.
weekend when I was having to take a pre-test for my Texas X admin practice exam. And I was like, okay, here are the two choices. And I'm a really bad test taker. So like, I always get nervous and I second guess myself the whole time, right? And I'm like, okay, don't second guess yourself. I mean, I've learned in my 48 years of life now, finally, that don't second guess yourself. Pick the choice that you are gonna go with and go and just leave it behind, you know? And so I think that that's part of it too. Kids, you know, get tripped up and they're like, oh, this one sounds good and this one sounds good. Okay, crud, I don't know.
Yeah.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, right? So anyway, okay. So next question is, I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So these majority of the answers were chosen right, it was less than 40%. So here's the one about this political slogan is from the mid 1800s, American platform or principles from 1857. Americans must rule America. What motivated some people to support this nativist slogan? And again, these were under 40% right. So they chose all four answers. This was 38%, this one was 37%. Do they not, so large-scale immigration to cities and the beliefs that immigrants stole jobs from native-born citizens, the desire for an independent country free from foreign rule and unfair mercantile economic policies. So what do you think tripped them up there?
I think I haven't talked about nativists yet in my class. I think that was like, we took this benchmark at spring, right before or after spring break, and so we haven't covered all of our units yet.
Right.
This is just a topic that
Hadn't gone over yet.
haven't gone
Okay.
over yet.
Gotcha.
I don't know, Mr. Glass, if you hit on this one.
I've covered it since then.
Okay.
And we talked about it a few times, but C is actually correct until you get to the end. And then you have to go to the logic tables with the kids. If you have an answer choice that says and, both sides of the and have to be correct.
Mm-hmm.
If it's or, only one has to be correct.
Right.
You gotta know or versus and,
Mm-hmm.
and so put a plus on the first half of it, but a minus on the other side.
Right.
B doesn't have that, it just has one thing. And it's not the best, the first part of C is a better response to it,
Right.
but that whole second half
Right.
tanks the answer.
Well,
for you.
here's the thing too, like, and I was like, again, I don't know social studies TEKS, but like, I was looking at immigrants stole jobs. Well, this Americans must rule Americans. To me, that,
It doesn't match with the leadership.
it doesn't
that's in the
match.
slogan.
Right, exactly. That's kind of what,
Yeah.
that caught my eye for that question. So anyway, all right, if you want to scroll up. Civil War and major historic, I didn't write the whole thing, sorry, it was getting late last night, and I was like, okay, all the historical people from the Civil War. Which statement describes the roles of George McClellan and Ulysses S. Grant during the Civil War? So the answer they chose, so it was close, because like D and A were 23 and 22%, and then B was, they were Union generals who commanded the Army of the Potomac. I mean, obviously, I don't understand why if they remember that Ulysses S. Grant and McClellan were Union, then this should have been, higher than the Confederate one, right?
This
To
is
me.
this is
We're still
Civil
covered.
War and Reconstruction are the end of our class. Like, that's when our class, like, the
At the end of
units
the year.
end.
Oh, gotcha.
Very end of
Okay.
the year, and so this is another one
Okay.
that we haven't hit Civil War yet
And-
in our class.
Again, going back to vocabulary, Army of the Potomac, they'll have no idea what Army of the Potomac means.
Yeah.
Right,
Even
because
after
they don't know
I
that's a
Even
river.
after I
Even
go
after I
over
tell
the
them what
Civil War
Army of the
unit,
Potomac
they
is.
probably won't know what that is.
Right, okay, so this is okay. So I mean, again, this is just giving you ideas as to what you might want to hit, when you're going back over these, the units before, you obviously go, okay, well, we got to make some finesses, right? But then, the ones that you haven't hit yet, they're totally understandable that they missed them because you haven't even gone over it yet. So totally get it. Okay, so these last three questions, which economic principle is President Jefferson showing support for in this excerpt? These were under 50% correct. That's why I chose them. Question 27, why did President Washington give this advice about the future of U.S. foreign policy? And then question 36, which era involved legislation enacted by the radical Republicans? Have y'all gone over all of these?
For sure, the first two. The third one.
Radical Republicans, that's gonna be Reconstruction, which is the last unit.
Gotcha.
So 2 out of the 3.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, here's the deal. Like I think, from where I came from teaching, y'all scores blow it out of the water compared to other school districts that I've been a part of. As far as what I've seen as scores, it's when I've just looked at the social studies when they say it's really, really hard, and I was like, oh dang, it actually, looks pretty. And then when I was reading it, I was like, oh my goodness. So I think that, from what I'm hearing from you guys is that, you know, when you break these apart and actually worry about the vocabulary, that would be, I think, the most ideal way to approach. And tell me if, you know, if there's other things that, I'm guessing y'all are working side by side as far as working on ideas and things like that, and
Sure.
yeah, all the things.
Yeah, like you said, I think this pointed out well that, leading up in the next 2 or 3 weeks before our start test, getting some additional vocabulary and word recognition and those kind of things could be super beneficial.
And just breaking it down for them, right? And just making it, and I noticed also on the score, well, I don't know what I did with the other page. Oh, here it is. So Mr. Ellis gave me so the breakdown of the demographics for the kiddos. So the Hispanic population hit about 50% was approaches, 15% meets, and 6% masters. Then you got the special ed indicator, which was only 37%. So to me, what is it that y'all are doing to help? Because that's my not my wheelhouse, but that's what I'm doing. What are you doing to help these special ed kiddos be able to? I know that it's incredibly hard because their vocabulary is even lower than a normal, 8th grader, right?
Yeah.
And so what are you doing to help these kiddos possibly, get maybe 1 or 2 more questions? I'm not asking for you to reach the moon with them, but what are you helping them to get, 1 or 2 other questions right?
Yeah.
Or feel a little more confident when they're going in and
Sure.
taking that test?
Yeah, this is a growth area for me, especially I have a large number of special ed students, but fortunately, we have in my class, I have an inclusion support teacher with the class that's majority, or not maybe not majority, but has quite a few special ed students, and so she's pretty instrumental in making sure that they get some extra attention and extra checking for understanding and those kind of things. But even with her help, I think still it's something, because looking at these scores, I think I need to make sure that I'm helping them as well and spending a little extra time with them.
Can I give you a suggestion?
Absolutely.
Okay, so one thing that I do with kids when they are not understanding vocabulary is I give a picture, right? I make them think of a picture or find a picture, right? That represents what that word means. And then it's easier for them to remember a picture than it is to remember all the words that go along with that vocabulary word.
Yeah, that's good.
And so if you can place if you want to pick 2 questions out of that benchmark that you want those kids to work on and focus on for the special ed kids, right? And the ones that they got wrong, you pick a picture and say, this picture correlates with this event, right? And have them remember that. And they'll be better about being able to tell you, oh, okay, because they can see in the picture. And then what I also have them do to actually have them grasp it is to make a picture of their own, or have you tell a sentence or 2 about it, and you write, this is what you said, right? And if you can say, yes, I agree that that's totally what impressment means, that's totally what imports means, that's totally what this means, or whatever. And that way they can, feel a little more confident about really looking at it and going, oh, okay, that's what that means, right? And so for whatever reason, the language barrier that special ed kids have, the length, and especially with the length of the vocabulary words that y'all are trying to teach them here in 8th grade U.S. history, is a lot of information, but they can remember a picture that goes with that. And it helps to have them go, okay, and then have them pull those out when y'all are working on vocabulary, working on these questions, going, hey, remember, I need you to pull out this And, you can decide and you can come up with a picture yourself. They don't have to, but then have them talk to you about it or have them talk to you, the inclusion teacher, about it so that that you're seeing that they're actually grasping the actual, concept of what you're trying to teach them with that vocabulary word. So just a thought, just a suggestion. I don't know. I know it's a lot. Here, look, I used to be a gen ed teacher. I know that it's a lot to ask one more thing for, you to do, and I get that, but it's just something that could possibly help these kiddos,
No, for sure.
be able to grasp and grasp the concept.
Yeah, it's
So-
something I've never tried before either,
So, what have you tried with your special ed students, Mr. West?
I have one student that I pulled. I have her 7th period in. She's scheduled in my class 1st period, so I pulled her from her 1st period. I don't know what I just said, I think I said something wrong. She's in my 7th period. I pulled her to my 1st period because I do have, on testing days, I do have inclusion support. And it's easier to get her to small group environments where she can get the additional support that she needs.
Right.
And so that's just a logistical thing on my part to make sure on testing days I make a note, I gotta go grab the girl and bring her down here.
Right.
Along the lines of what you said with the images, I do have some files called history and pictures, and it's just an image, and then there's 4 multiple choice questions like you see on the test, but there's no questions. And there's about 5 of them to the thing, and put it up here and ask the kids, look at this picture, what goes with this picture, what's the terminology that goes with it, and it's just a way for them to see it, and oftentimes on that STAR test, anytime there's an image, if there's notes above it or notes below it, you read everything. It'll give you a clue, and as we were going over questions yesterday, I had them. There's one of the questions that has just a little thing at the top. They give a passage about Harper's Ferry. And above it, it says, this is an excerpt, refers to an event that occurred in Virginia in 1859. So as we go over, I'll tell them, underline Virginia, put a box around 1859.
Right.
Avery and I only make our kids learn 7 dates for the year, 7 key dates. One of those dates is 1861, so we're 2 years from the Civil War starting, and we're in Virginia. There's you some context. Now read the quote. And so the other biggest thing that I say is the biggest challenge for us in history is now that we've gone to computerized testing, you could manipulate stuff.
Right,
When it's
that's
paper
the
test.
thing, that's the thing about English, the English test too. They actually hate doing any of the highlighting or anything on the computer.
And
I
maybe
could
the
get them to do it on a
cross-curricular
piece
piece
of
that would help
paper, but I couldn't get them to do it, and that was infuriating. And so they just read the whole thing, and they wouldn't do any of the test strategies or anything, and it was very, very frustrating. And I would be like, ugh. You're just reading it and you're not really paying attention to what you're doing, because they could make notes as to what this paragraph was about, blah, blah, all the things. They're not doing that with it now being computerized. So I totally understand and feeling on that one. So, all right. Well, if y'all have any other questions about anything that I found or anything, I'm here. If y'all seem to know, like, what you're doing and all the things. I appreciate you being willing to sit here with me and go through this. I hope this enlightened you a little bit on what you could do between now and the STAR test. When is that y'all's actual STAR test?
April 25th.
April 25th. Okay, so you've got a couple weeks left. Okay, and like I said, I'm in the ACE room, and I'm all back in the corner, but I'm willing to help in any way, shape, or form. Especially with special ed kiddos, if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email. Again, my name is Carrie Johnson. It's C.A. Johnson is my email address. But yeah, y'all can shoot me an email or anything. But I appreciate y'all being willing to do this for me today.
You betcha.